Hello, welcome back to Normal Island. I hope everyone's been having a really, really wonderful bank holiday weekend. I'm joined, actually, before I do that, I have to introduce myself. I'm Sarah Dallal and I'm joined by the wonderful Lewis. Hi, Lewis, how are you?
Hello. Almost forgot your little bit there. Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah, had a lovely weekend, bank holiday weekend. Is this the month where there's two of them? Or
Yes, and it's why is there two? Is one of them for Charles' birthday?
I actually really don't know. Maybe someone in the comments can tell us. What is the significance of the end of May bank holiday?
Cal's just said one's May Day and one's a spring bank holiday. Oh, so that's wonderful. Listen, I love a 4-day week. It makes things a lot easier. And I hope everyone's been having a really great bank holiday weekend. And I'm very happy to have Lewis here. So, coming up on tonight's show, we've got quite a few stories to get through. Um, First one, Labour's biggest threat is Labour itself, not the Reform Party, as Wes Streeting is claiming. There's a group that demands UK define sex as biological in law. Sex Matters does that in a letter. Israel's plan to seize Gaza. And finally, Zack Polanski announces Green Party leadership bid. As always, though, do remember to like the stream. And if you're not a subscriber, then please hit that button. Help us reach our goal of 40,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I'm very optimistic. We'll also be getting to your comments later on at the end of the show. So please make sure that you're busy in the chat. But on to our first story. I feel like I always talk about Wes Streeting. I have to preface this, but he is back. He's back on my show. Wes Streeting took to Trevor Phillips's show and said that the biggest threat to Labour is the Reform Party. Let's check it
Well, I
out.
think reform is definitely a real threat and one that we take seriously. I think there's clearly, on the right of British politics, a realignment taking place. It's not yet clear whether at the next general election it will be Reform or the Conservatives that are Labour's main challengers. But we've got to take that threat seriously. And in that spirit, I think Reform does deserve more airtime and scrutiny of their policies, because you mentioned the issues that Nigel Farage wanted to fight the local elections on. There were other issues like the NHS where he wilts in the sunlight of scrutiny. He says on one hand, says people who can pay should pay. And then he says, oh, no, but I still want the NHS. He says he wants an insurance system. But he doesn't say who should pay, how much they should pay.
OK.
And that is a real threat to the NHS, and one I think we absolutely
Will you start to
take
treat
seriously
them now as your most serious opposition?
I certainly do treat them as a serious opposition force. As I say, I don't know whether it will be Reform or the Conservatives that emerge as the main threat. I don't have a horse in that race, but like Alien versus Predator, you don't really want either one to win, but one of them will emerge as the main challenger to Labour at the next general election. But as the Prime Minister said in his article over the weekend, we see as the big issues and the big battlegrounds the economy, the cost of living, borders, and the NHS. Right. And we've got to show by the next election real improvement to people's lives and experiences on all three of those issues.
There's so much to unpack there, and it sounds awfully familiar to a certain side of the political spectrum. Some of you might criticise me, but I think that he's wrong. I think the biggest threat to Labour is actually Labour itself, and here's why. Recent polls have underscored that Reform's rise is less about Farage or Reform's brilliance as a whole, and more about Labour's failings. In one YouGov poll that shocked Westminster, put Reform at 25% ahead of Labour on 24%, with the Tories at 21%. And although those percentages are marginal, it does say something. In short, Labour is offering Tory-light policies in a country that desperately needs bold change. It's pretty simple. Labour, you don't beat an insurgent by actually becoming them. But here's the irony. By steering towards the centre-right, Labour risks losing more voters on its left flank than it ever could to Reform. A new analysis shows Labour stands to lose twice as many seats to a mass defection of voters, the Greens or Lib Dems, as it would from a similar swing to Reform. So yes, Wes is wrong. Again, by chasing the approval of Murdoch headlines and right-wing focus groups, Starmer's Labour has left millions of working class and left-leaning voters politically homeless. Those voters can either stay home, turn to smaller progressive parties, or even hold their noses and vote for a demagogue like Farage. But because they want fascism, not because they want fascism in a pinstripe suit, but because Labour hasn't given them a compelling alternative. Lewis, we've just seen what's happened in the recent by-election and various local elections up and down the country. Why are people so convinced that new face means new system? And then we'll get into West Streeting in a little bit.
I am so sorry I was lagging then. Could you repeat the questions there? I
Fine.
apologize.
It's so fine. I was saying, we've seen the recent results in the by-election and the local elections up and down the country. Why are people so convinced that a new face means a new system when they're voting for the likes of reform?
I think there is like a psychology that ties into this, right? And I think it's the same with Trump in many ways. I was listening to, I think it was Pod Save America the other day, and they were talking about Bernie, because obviously a lot of us like Bernie. He's got quite a few fans in here in the UK, but he was saying that people weren't necessarily voting for Bernie because he was offering all these amazing and great policies, and he's a big fat lefty and a democratic socialist. It's just because he didn't represent the establishment. And he was also comparing it to Obama as well. It's like Obama won, not just because he's a fantastic communicator, because he was a face that nobody knew. He came in and was just like, I'm new. I'm not part of this establishment. I'm not these 30, 40-year senators. And I feel like it's almost the same for Nigel Farage. And, me and Curtis always bring this fact up that we've both met voters who will say, oh, might vote for Green, might vote for reform. And you're kind of like, what? Like, make that make sense. And it's just the idea of just voting for something different and voting for something new, not voting for the establishment in some way or another. Like, obviously, I would hold those people accountable who just want to vote for reform for the sake of voting for something different, because obviously the policies that they're enabling and supporting are, bad and dangerous. But ultimately, people just want something different. And what's frustrating about these like clips of Labour and the direction that they're going in West Streeting is that instead of just saying, oh, which version of what already exists can we be to try and win, instead of actually going down the path of how do we actually be different? How do we stand out? What can we bring to people that's different? What haven't they seen before? And even though I don't think Farage is necessarily offering anything new, I think he's just really good at, rewrapping it and packaging it in a maybe slightly different way. Labour are failing to see what they need to do, which is offer something different, because that is currently what's appealing to people.
A really great point, actually. And I think that this is the issue, isn't it? I think what Farage is good at is actually pretending to be a working class man. He emulates the, hey, I'm one of you. Look at me drinking a pint in the pub, and look at me with a helmet on for a photo op. Like, he's really good at emulating that. But if people actually studied the things that Reform is saying, and they would realize that they are basically, most of them, ex-Tory MPs who are very much, like you said, part of the establishment and don't care much about class solidarity or collectivism, but simply just about individualism. So going back to what Wes Streeting was saying, he was obviously echoing a lot of those talking points. He mentioned borders. I remember borders. I can't remember much else, because I was just like, isn't that just a right-wing talking point? Like, it's so weird. So my question to you is then, is Labour at greater risk of defeat from its own lack of boldness and broken promises than from the Reform Party? So, like, in other words, has Starmer made Labour its own worst enemy by alienating its base?
Yeah, absolutely. When you obviously opened up the story, and the first thing that you said is obviously Labour's biggest enemy is themselves. As soon as I saw that interview with Wes Streeting, I grabbed my phone, made a video, and said the exact same thing. The biggest threat, not even to Labour right now, but to the country, is the Labour Party itself, because they are in the position where they could stop Reform from winning, and they're choosing not to. They think for some reason this plan is going to work, right? There's that paragraph that's kind of floating around between a lot of political TikTokers and social media people right now. It's like of Morgan McSweeney saying, so what we need to do in response to this election is become more blue Labour. And it's kind of like, okay, so how is doubling up on what's failed you going to work in any way? It just doesn't make sense. I think we talked about this on the last show. There was that recent data that came out that showed that around, I think it was 74 or 75% of Reform voters polled amongst around, I think it was around 4,000 or 5,000. They haven't voted for Labour in over 20 years, right? So I don't get why they're going after these votes. We know from data that the Conservative voters who either didn't turn up or fled, a lot of them went to Lib Dem, some went to Reform, some of them just didn't vote, and obviously some of them did vote for the Conservatives. Very few of those votes went to Labour. So who are they? I just don't get who they're actually trying to appeal to. All the data shows that they're losing voters to the Dems, the Greens. They lost tons to independents. When I looked at the data after the last election, the amount of people who voted independent in this election was double what it was the year before. And then, sorry, the election before. And the election before that, which was 2017, I think, yes, 2017, the independent vote doubled from that period. So it's doubled and doubled on each election. So people are just turning away and looking for alternatives. So why not chase those voters? It simply makes no sense. And again, they continue to miss like very easy opportunities of, I don't know, populism in lots of ways. I feel like even though it is good to obviously do practical policies, I feel like sometimes you need to make room for things which are kind of superficial in a way, right? There's this perception that like MPs are greedy and they're just rinsing the taxpayer and they're spending all these monies on fancy dinners. Well, why don't you tighten up those rules on like how they can claim, right? Why is it that an MP can go to PMQs on a Wednesday and instead of going to the taxpayer subsidized restaurants and food that they have access to in their parliament buildings, why are they going over the road to a nice fancy restaurant and then claiming expenses on that? And I feel like these types of narratives, you're kind of creating them and then clamping down on them. I feel like this is what people want to see. And I'm not saying that people should start just doing superficial things, but there are so many kind of like easy wins that they're not taking on, like denying the pay rise for the MPs. They were like, it's an independent body. And it's like, okay, independent bodies recommend pay rises all the time. And you've already said that the next time the independent body wants to do a pay rise for NHS workers or anyone else or teachers, you're not going to pay for it. So why are you accepting the MP's pay rise? Imagine the moment that Keir Starmer could have got up on a lectern and said, why are we going to give anybody a pay rise right now who's an MP? We're earning enough money. Like easy points to score, right? But they just continue to fail.
Yeah. And I think you made honestly such great points. And I think the only way to stop reform is for Labour to reform itself. That's the irony of it. I think they need to rediscover the bold socialist principles that they were once rooted in, that actually inspire the base and improve people's lives. Otherwise, this realignment that Streeting is talking about, that he fears is going to happen on the right, will be nothing compared, I think, to the realignment of the betrayed voters that decided Labour isn't worth their loyalty. But really great points, Lewis, and I want to go on to the next story because we've got quite a few things to get through. But this week, a group calling itself Sex Matters released a letter demanding UK leaders define sex in law as strictly biological. I think it sounds pretty familiar, right? It's not. It's well, it is familiar. It is familiar. It's a coordinated attack on trans rights led by groups like LGB Alliance, Transgender Trend, and GenSpect, the usual anti-trans suspects that are dressed up in a pretend lab coat. I won't read all of this, but the letter is damning, it is scary, it is awful, but their message essentially says, and you can probably guess it, that trans people shouldn't be allowed into the spaces that match their gender. Not now, not ever. They even argue puberty blockers should be banned because life is too hard for trans people, but that's thanks to the rules that they helped create. Q Macklemore puts it brilliant on Blue Sky. They say they're right. It's like setting someone's house on fire and calling them unfit for home ownership. But he basically says, here's the thing. I have to stress about this letter. Their argument is literally that the UK Supreme Court judgment has made life untenable. And he's absolutely right there. Labour's clarity that they seem to be rooting themselves in is starting to look a lot like cowardice. Starmer welcomed the anti-trans Supreme Court ruling. Bridget Phillipson echoed it. When both parties chase the same reactionary headlines, it's trans people who actually bleed and suffer. Katie Montgomery nailed it as well, by saying that this letter is absolutely insane. And it's not about protecting women; it's about keeping trans people. It's about keeping trans people visible, vulnerable, and vilified. And that's the issue. Their real fear is a world where trans people thrive, imperceptible to cis, as Willoughby put it, too ordinary to scapegoat, too happy to control. Lewis, this push seems to be coming from all angles. I feel like every time I'm on social media, I'm seeing TERFs and transphobes just taking the limelight slightly. It is feeling damning and it's feeling scary, and I can't even begin to imagine how the trans community feel. But I want to get your take on what are the broader legal ramifications if biological sex becomes the explicit legal definition in the UK? And could this set some sort of precedent that threatens other minority protections under equality law?
Yeah, I feel like, did you recently see that clip by any chance from an American legislator recently? It wasn't like the main one, I don't think. I think it was like a local one, but it went very viral, where that guy was talking about trans people, and then he said, everyone's either born with this chromosome or that chromosome, and then like the woman whispers in his ear, and she says, "That's not completely true," because they were talking about intersex people as well.
Mm.
I just don't feel like any of these people are actually qualified or knowledgeable in any way to be either legislating or not protecting people in the right way. These types of things should be led by absolute experts, right? If you actually get pretty much any academic or expert or scientist in a room who intersects with this study, most of them will not necessarily agree, but they will all have similar opinions about like sex is not binary. It's so much more complicated. And this idea of trying to define it in a very, very strict way is messy. And Labour have created a complete mess for them. I feel like if they were smart enough, because they knew this ruling was coming, I think if they would have taken the blow, because obviously there was always going to be blowback, if they would have just amended the Equality Act immediately as soon as they came in, they could have taken the initial backlash from the right-wing media, and then just avoided all of this. But they've created an absolute mess for themselves because this is staying in the news and it's going to continue to stay in the news. And, if they go ahead and legislate in this way, then they're going to continue to lose so many voters. Like, they're not going to really gain any from this. And by not clearing up this mess immediately, they just created such a long and awful mess, which intersects in so many different ways. And the fact that the person who is in charge of I'm going to say this slowly, the EHRC, because I always get it mixed up with the ECHR, is a complete ideologue, right? So she's got this power to disseminate these rules, and she literally basically wrote them overnight, and dissented them to all these bodies because she's a complete ideologue. She was put in place by Liz Truss, and when Liz Truss appointed her, she turned around and said she's going to carry out like what I believe in. There was a specific speech where she said she is going to do what I want her to do, and this person is a complete ideologue who is dangerous. She's showing that she can't be independent in any way. She's showing that she has her own ideology, and people are going to get harmed from this. We've already seen the constant conversations of what's going to stop a man who is born a male from just walking into a bathroom and saying, "I was born a woman," because there's just simply no way to prove it unless you want to retroactively um um not even retroactively, sorry. You would have to almost like force everybody to carry ID at this point. Like, yeah, some countries actually do that. A lot of European countries do that. Every time I go to Italy with my partner, he always has to have his ID on him, but it never gets checked. But ultimately, like, there's no way to police this. There's no way to manage this. It would have just been easier to change the Equality Act and avoid all of this mess and just the pain that people are going through right now. I've even heard some people say they might even consider leaving the country because they just don't want to go through this. Why can't I hear Sarah? Is it me? Oh, no, I can hear you now, Callum, but Sarah's gone off. We'll be just a second, guys. Cue lift music. Oh, hi, everybody. Wasn't preparing for this. Oh, I can hear Callum right now, the producer, guys. I'm just going to turn him off for a second. So while Sarah's getting her microphone sorted, they'll sort that in the background. Yeah, they can't hear her too. I'm just looking at some comments right now. Gaddafi, if Farage gets elected, I want anarchy. What's also scary about all these types of things as well is that when we talk about the normalization of this, right, in the Overton window where things are moving, Labour are basically continuing to set Farage up for success by not being the opposition to the right, by not sticking up for trans rights. They're basically just normalizing this in any way. We've already got, the Reform Party coming out today saying they want to ban flags on all the buildings that they control through the councils that they now now control, which includes pride flags. So that raises the question of, is it, because he called them woke. So is it woke that after 49 people were killed at the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando years ago, and I think there was 600 vigils around the UK for the 49 people who were killed, and a lot of local councils put up a pride flag at half mast. So this is woke now. This is what we're descending into. I am very scared for the future about. Oh, I can hear Sarah in the background, but now her camera's gone off. Sarah will be back in a moment. I'm very scared of like a Section 28 type of situation if Nigel Farage and the Reform Party come into power. What's happening in America right now, especially with trans people as well, is absolutely awful. People have had to change their gender back to their assigned gender at birth. Trans people are currently going through the legal system to stop. Oh, hello.
Hello. I'm so sorry. What happened?
No idea. I'll quickly finish that point though, but I was just saying that right now there's like legal battles going on because Trump's trying to kick trans people out of the military in the US, and a judge has halted it in the meantime. But we will see. Where were we before?
Yeah, thank you for holding the fort. Honestly, I'm so sorry that happened. I don't know what happened, but essentially, you'd made a really, really great point that I wanted to add on to. But about the whole idea that people's civil liberties are at stake here, and that state control. I wanted to come in and say about state control. And I think that obviously this move would obviously open the door to more state control over bodily autonomy.
Can we just get a volume? Yeah, I can hear you. I just want to get a volume check though, because people are saying you're a bit quiet.
Okay.
How's Sarah compared to me, guys?
Is that okay? Can everyone hear me okay?
Callum is saying it. The producer's saying it sounds all right. Can we just get one more check from the audience?
Yeah, I had to restart the thing, so maybe it's slightly quieter. Okay, maybe I should.
Andy said volume's good now. Okay, let's go. Let's pie.
This whole idea about the more state control over bodily autonomy, and that's a really scary time. And I think at the moment what we're seeing is a culture of apathy, and that's what's frightening me. This is going to obviously not just affect trans healthcare, but potentially again reproductive rights or other areas. If the logic of the state knows best, then we're going to define things under our pretenses, gain some sort of ground, and the fact of the matter is the stats are very clear that if you deny trans young people who are trans puberty blockers or things that are for their gender identity, it has shown to drastically improve mental health. So I do think that we will cause more distress to young people if we deny them fundamental health care that will aid them. I don't know if you wanted to add on to that, Lewis, before I move on to the next story.
Yeah, just one more thing as well, because I'm not sure if I mentioned it in one of the previous shows, because the Good Law Project did a video on this a couple of weeks ago. But by the way, the Good Law Project are doing a absolutely fucking fantastic job right now. So if you're not following them or supporting them in any way through any of their social media or whatever it might be, please go and follow them. They are doing so much in this respect. But they are currently trying to challenge the government because they discovered that there was a report that the last Conservative government commissioned through a company for the NHS, and it was about how to prevent suicide for young trans people. They're not releasing the report. They said it's going to get released at some point in the future, and the Good Law Project are trying to get their hands on it because they suspect that it will probably say that they need gender affirming care. They need lots of types of care, which is controversial to lots of people, and it's only become controversial because of the right wing media. And the Labour government are now withholding it. Wes Streeting has more power than the last person who was in charge of the NHS. They must be very aware of this report, and it probably contradicts the moves that they have made in respect to stopping new young people from getting access to puberty blockers and other types of care too. So I think it's really important to know that the Labour government are currently suppressing a report which is how to prevent trans young people from ending their own lives.
And if you notice in that letter, Wes Streeting did get CC'd into it. So I think that says a lot about where Labour stand. But yeah, thank you so much, Lewis. Before we move on, If you're enjoying the show, then please like the stream. And if you're not a subscriber, then hit that button. If you want us to grow, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. And there is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. But I will press again and again, don't put yourself out if you aren't able to contribute. Alternatively, you can become a YouTube member for just 99p. It's just always great to have you guys in here. I think that's the most priceless thing. So on to our next story. Israel just dropped the pretense. As Ground News reports, the Israeli government has officially approved a plan to seize and indefinitely occupy Gaza, not just defeat Hamas, seize the land and hold it forever. It is colonialism, openly admitted. So where's the outrage from UK politicians? Because I'm struggling to see it. It's nowhere. The silence is absolutely deafening. Let's rewind back to 2023 when Israel first invaded Gaza. UK politicians were literally lining up to defend it. Rishi Sunak, if you recall, was saying, "We stand with Israel," and gave them unqualified support. And then Starmer was saying that Israel had the right to cut off water and electricity, collective punishment, which is a war crime under the Geneva Conventions. Let's fast forward to 2024, and Israel is now publicly declaring, what year is it? It's 2025. Can I start that again? Fast forward to 2025, and Israel is now publicly declaring it will hold Gaza indefinitely, violating international law, the UN Charter, and basic humanity in any sense of morality. And what do we hear from Westminster? Absolutely nothing. No condemnation, no calls for sanctions, just absolute silence. Suddenly, the rules-based order they love preaching about doesn't apply. Britain was pretty happy to denounce Russia for annexing Crimea, called it a flagrant abuse of international law. But when Israel announced its own illegal land grab, crickets, the message is clear. If you're a UK ally, you can get away with ethnic cleansing. So this clearly isn't about security, it's about conquest, it's about treating Palestinians as disposable, and Britain's political class is complicit in that project. If international law only applies to our enemies, then it isn't law, is it? It's selective outrage. And if our leaders can't condemn apartheid and occupation when it's right in front of them, they've forfeited any claim to moral leadership. Lewis, I'm sure you've got a lot to add on to this, but last year, British politicians were literally defending Israel's actions as self-defense. Now that Israel's effectively declaring a permanent occupation, how do you think those same politicians should respond? Should figures like Sunak and Starmer be pressed to reconcile their past statements with Israel's current actions? And if they remain silent, what does that say about the UK's credibility on human rights?
Yeah, no, absolutely. All of these people involved should absolutely be investigated in any future endeavors or investigations that come through international courts or other bodies. These things, unfortunately, do take years to process. Obviously, you've got the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, which is separate to the ICC, who handed the individual arrest warrants to Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. But hopefully, I hope that they will rule in the future. Well, it sounds weird saying use the word hopefully, but I hope that they rule that this is a genocide. And even though it sounds like a very twisted thing to say, but that legal definition will allow so much more clarity and maneuvering on this issue. But unfortunately, it's probably not going to happen for many years to come. It would be nice to say it's fine. We've got a human rights lawyer as a prime minister, right? That would be great if he was actually acting on that in any way. I want to highlight one thing that's also happening right now in Israel that no one's really talking about. The Knesset, the parliament, is trying to pass a law. They've been trying to do this for a few months. They're having a debate on it. I think it was today or tomorrow, about putting an 80% tax on any donations from international organizations that direct any food, aid, medicine, whatever it is, to Palestinians in any way. So if the UK government, which they still have given aid and food to Gazans and to Palestinians, if they want to give, I think it was the most recent one was 100 million, 80 million of that would go to the Israeli government coffers. The idea isn't to make money out of it. The idea is just to stop people from donating, because under this new occupation, they want obviously complete control, and they want to control all the food, aid, everything. So by keeping any foreign companies out, any foreign organizations, any foreign donors, anything like that at all, they will be able to have complete and utter control over everything. They will be able to say no one's allowed in, no one's allowed out. We have full control. We don't need any food or aid. We don't need any agencies coming in because we will control it all, and nobody will want to donate because they don't want their money going to the Israeli government coffers. It's not even an occupation. This is just basically annexation. They said that, we left Gaza in 2005. No, you didn't. You blockaded it by land, sea, and air. A part of the announcement as well, sorry, I'm not sure if you mentioned it in the introduction, because I can't remember exactly everything that you said, but part of the plan is to push the entire population of Gaza into the south. So, these 2 or so million people are going to get squeezed into a tiny, tiny little area, which I'm sure Israel will continue to bomb. I don't really want to make any sort of like speculations or predictions, but I do have a weird feeling that they're going to try and push them across the border at some point, or force them in that some way, which will obviously be a breach to the agreement that they have with Egypt. But who knows? There's been some reports of Israel not being happy with Egypt recently. There was a recent report they were saying that there was military gathering on the Egyptian side of the Gaza border and that Israel wasn't happy. So I was thinking, are they going to try and use this as a kind of like, I don't know, a preemptive thing to be able to say, oh no, we didn't break the agreement, you broke the agreement, so they can, I don't know, push the Palestinians out. I don't know. That's me just completely speculating. But I'm just really sad.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going
No,
on.
it's fine. No, but the thing is, though, it's an emotive topic, and I can only expect for everyone who is engaging in a conversation like this to be emotional about it. Like, I can't help. I literally watched a video today of one of the doctors talking about how he had to pick between children with the medication that he needed to give them, and allow some kids to die and some kids to survive. And this is what's happening in Gaza day in and day out, and I can't help but feel that my heart is absolutely torn every single day, because we have the privilege of being able to switch off our phones. But I force myself to watch these things. I force myself to read this stuff because it's a complete violation of international law and a complete violation of human decency. I see no human decency, and you're absolutely right. This is an annexation, and this is apartheid in action. So, I mean, I guess my final question to you then is: what responsibility do UK institutions and citizens, not just morally but legally, do they have to resist policies that enable ethnic cleansing and collective punishment, which, as we know, goes against the UN Charter is explicitly banned?
Yeah, the issue that we have is our own history. When it came to ending South African apartheid, the UK and the US jointly were the last 2 countries to basically make a move on it. We did get a recent report that David Lammy was in talk with France and Emmanuel Macron to potentially recognize a Palestinian state, because France has said that they're going to probably do it in June, which would be a good move, but it is still the bare minimum. But that, again, might be one of those stories. I don't know if you remember, it was like a month or 2 ago when David Lammy was in Parliament and he said Israel has breached international law. And then immediately the number 10 spokesperson came out and said, no, Lammy's wrong. And then Lammy retracted and said, oh, they're at risk of breaching international law. So is this story about Lammy talking with France about recognizing a Palestinian state something Lammy is doing, which might get just absolutely shot down by, Keir Starmer number 10 and Morgan McSweeney? Or is it something that the government are actually going to move to do? But even again, recognizing a Palestinian state is good. It still doesn't stop what's happening. We need sanctions. I saw, Finland, the Finland Prime Minister today saying, oh, we're very concerned. I saw the European Union saying, oh, Israel needs to be cautious. And it's like, no, we need action. We need sanctions. We need so many things happening right now. But do you know what the US is doing right now? They're trying to, two politicians have introduced a bill, I think it was today or yesterday, I can't remember when I saw the headline, one Democrat, one Republican, that if you join in boycotts for Israeli products, companies and corporations, you could get I think it was $1 million fine and up to 20 years in prison.
Yeah.
And this is the problem, but because the US has so much global power, you could see a situation where, and I'm not saying this forgives them in any way, but if the EU were to like, okay, we're putting sanctions on Israel, then the US punishes the EU. So I get, like, obviously the situation that some people are in, but they don't even seem like they're willing to do that anyway. So we can't even have that conversation of the awkward position that they're in, right? Nobody really, besides like Ireland, Spain, I think Norway, have really actually fully taken up actually trying to do things through international courts. I think there's a few other countries in there too, but I can't remember them all. But it's unfortunately, and I hate to say this, it's countries that don't have the global power and influence that we need to stop what's happening right now.
Yeah, completely agree with you, and really, really great points. Thank you, Lewis. On to our final story, because I'm conscious of time. Zack Polanski is running to lead the Green Party, and honestly, it couldn't come at a better time. Let's have a look. Is there a video?
The Labour government is failing, and the planet is burning. People are looking for somewhere to turn. Nigel Farage and his billionaire mates, they don't offer any real solutions. It's time to rise up. It's time for bold action. And that's why I'm running, to be the next leader of the Green Party. We all know we need a party that is bolder, clearer about what it is that we stand for, and crucially, what we will always stand against. A party that can cut through, not just to those who already agree, but to millions more people. A party that knows inequality is at the heart of all of our problems. Town, village, country, city, wherever you live, inequality hurts us all. A party that will confront fascism and will call a genocide exactly what it is. Now is the moment to build the next generation. New faces, new names, new voices. This is how we'll win. We can beat reform, win more councillors, and send more Green MPs to Parliament. Because we know how to win now, but it's time to aim higher. There are 39 constituencies where we came second place to an increasingly unpopular Labour government, and many more constituencies where we are growing every single day. This is only the beginning. People are crying out for the Green Party to seize this moment. A nature and climate crisis, racist riots on our streets, and inequality growing deeper every day. It is time for bold leadership. When I say bold, I mean bold. For years, I've debated some of the toughest interviewers. And when I say leadership, I mean real leadership. I've seen the difference when you can help empower communities by listening and inspiring people to work together. That's why I'll always use my platform to lift other people up. On our estates, in our workplaces, in our face spaces. We can have environmental, social, racial and economic justice if we unite, and the Green Party will be the united force for change. Join us for bold leadership now.
Catchy music. With Labour retreating to soulless centrism and the Tories collapsing under their own cruelty, it seems that Britain is in need of a change. We're hearing voters say we want a change, we want a change, we want something different, and they want a party with a spine. Excuse me, let me start again. Under Polanski, the Greens could maybe finally go from being the tree-hugging, reusable, cup-drinking party people deem them to being the conscious of politics and the catalyst to do that. But this leadership race isn't just about one person. It's about whether the Green Party has the guts to seize this moment. We are at a critical time in politics, and I think this is a great opportunity to do it. People are crying out for something real. Labour's U-turns, Lib Dem invisibility, Tory decay, the Reform Party doing what they do best, being fake. It's all leaving a vacuum. The Greens must fill it, not with timid technocracy, but with bold, radical vision. I think people are calling out for a party that says, yes, nationalise energy, yes, free public transport, yes, climate reparations, Gaza ceasefire, calling it a genocide, trans liberation, and proportional representation. Not just slogans, but actual strategy, and not just protest, but legitimate power. Zack Polanski's leadership bid is a chance to sharpen the Greens into the insurgent force they were always meant to be. But I think it's going to take more than peace and love vibes. It will take discipline, messaging, and a will to punch through the noise. If the Greens get serious and cut through the ASMR that they sometimes do, and get loud, they could be a political surprise of the decade. Lewis, Labour's drift right is pretty obvious, but how can the Greens turn this disillusionment that people are in at the moment into mass support without losing their radical edge?
Yeah, I think Zack is a good communicator, which is what I have been missing from Carla and Adrian. It's not that they're not good communicators. I'll correct that. I think they are. I think Carla's definitely better than Adrian, but they always seem like a little bit rehearsed and stuff. And I feel like what people want when it comes to looking for another party or another politician that they want to like when it comes to being disillusioned is just somebody who's charismatic. And I do think Zack has that naturalness to him. Like, he's obviously when I say he's rehearsed, like he knows what he's talking about, so he's fast, but he does it in such a natural way, meaning like he just comes off as like, I think, conversational and passionate. Whereas I feel like when I see like Carla and Adrian, talking and interview. I've interviewed Carla. We interviewed Carla at Turn Left in Parliament. It just seems kind of like so rehearsed, and it doesn't seem. It almost seems like she's prepared everything that she's going to say before, and she's almost doing like a speech at, like a not like a TED talk, but a speech at like a conference or something like that. It just seems not as natural. She's still a good communicator. A lot of people like Carla, but Zack has that naturalness to him. So I feel like what people are looking for is just that person who is going to kind of bring them into their circle, bring them into their thought pattern, just by coming across as like kind of like an everyday person. And I don't feel like Zack has that. You don't look at him or hear him and think that's a politician, right? It's just a guy who's really good at talking, really good at explaining things, plain and clearly, doesn't speak in big words, doesn't come across as snooty or privileged or in any way. He just seems like a guy. And I feel like that is kind of what people want. So he could be successful in bringing disillusioned people over.
Yeah, agreed. And I think this is something that we've talked about on the show quite a few times on different days. But the whole idea that I think on the left we need to be more aggressive in our approach when it comes to the policies that we want to enact and seeing the change that we want to see. We see. I know it's kind of like surface level to kind of divide the left and the right in this sort of way, but it's true in the sense that we see the right being aggressive in their approach and being loud and using social media in a way that's almost undeniable. And I kind of want to see the same sort of energy on the left, because it seems that we're still, whenever I say, yeah, I'm quite open about who I voted for. I voted for the Green Party, but whenever I say I voted for the Greens, they're like, oh, so you just, peace and love and good vibes. And I'm like, no, like there's so many like great policies within the Green Party, but they're just not loud about it. Do you know what I mean? So and I do feel, I do feel, this is my personal opinion, I do feel Zack could potentially be that individual that can bring disillusioned voters during a time of confusion and people who are politically homeless to actually resonate with the policies that Green are beckoning and calling for. So I do want to see more of that aggression.
I just want to say something, and I'm gonna be the mean gay here when I say this.
Oh,
Zack, if you are watching, which I know you do, I'm saying this with all the love in the world. You follow me on TikTok, which I appreciate. But like the way you look in that video, you look great. You look fantastic. You look sharp. You look amazing. Sometimes when I do see you in interviews, I have heard people say like sometimes you don't look like. It's about finding that balance between not looking like a sharp politician in a very sharp expensive suit, but then looking like a more casual guy. The way you look in that video is absolutely great, and please, the appearance that you're keeping there, keep up that appearance, because I feel like you'll have that perfect balance of like a good looking guy who dresses well, who looks well, and talks well as well. But in some of the interviews that I've seen, I have seen lots of comments about you looking like too much of a Green MP in a way, and it's about finding that balance between looking too casual and looking too smart. The way you're dressed in that video and the way you're acting is like the perfect balance that I've seen you in. So please keep that up. And that's kind of like the bit of like mean gay coming out in me. And I'm sure as a he's a gay vegan who lives in Hackney. I'm sure he's used to a lot of mean gays. In London. Anyway, I don't think it's too mean, but like the way you're appearing there, keep that up, and I feel like you'll be able to draw more people in, because sometimes some people have said that you look too much like a Green politician, and I feel like that's the perfect balance, the image that you've presented there.
yeah, Lewis is definitely the
People are going to call me bitch.
stylist.
People are going to call me a bitch in the
No,
comments.
I get called a bitch daily, and I love it. So
I already got called arrogant in the chat today. Thank you very much.
I get
Yes,
called that.
yes, I did see that comment.
I get called that every day as well. I also get called passive aggressive. I think I need to work on that. But you make a great point. The thing is, though, these optics matter, right? The way that you look matters, and I do look at all of these political parties, and an appearance goes a long way. And like I said, I personally do like Zack's approach, and I think that is something that I resonate with personally. I think plenty of people do as well, and I think people are itching for a change, and this is the best time to do it. But I think, conscious of time, let's go to our producer for comments. Hello, how are you?
Why
Yes,
can't I hear Callum?
because you've turned off stage fees or whatever.
But he needs to come onto the stage, so
Oh, I could hear you. God, seconds.
Callum's going to be 2 seconds.
Yeah. I don't think you're arrogant, by the way, Lewis. I think you're just right.
Becca's like, Lewis eye for the leftist guy, because they were talking about queer eye.
Oh, yeah, queer eye. Yeah, Callum's coming in a second. I think he's just trying to sort out his mic situation.
Oh, I'm cropped differently on this one, so I look smaller. I'm gonna stay like this.
Cute.
Right, you should all be able to hear me now.
Tim said, "Turn left. Needs a billionaire donor." No, we don't, because billionaires should not exist.
Yeah, they shouldn't
You
exist.
should be able to hear me now, guys. How are you all?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Wait,
Hello. Can everyone hear Callum?
Callum, it says you're added to the scene.
I am added to the scene.
Can everybody hear Callum?
I'm definitely added to the
Yes.
scene. I'm here, so
Yeah,
let me know in the chat.
Andy
if you
said,
can
yeah,
hear me. Yes,
Evan
wonderful,
says-
Andy. If Lewis can't, that's a problem at your end.
No, I can hear you. It just said you weren't on the scene. But
No,
hello,
I'm here.
everyone.
I'm here. Hello.
Oh, wait, no,
So-
wait. Becca said no.
Oh, what?
Becca might be slightly behind.
Oh, she might be slightly behind.
I'm going to work on the assumption that I'm here. Everything that I can see tells me that I'm
Okay,
here.
everyone's saying, "Hey, you're here."
so
Okay.
Yeah.
If not, then that's fine. Just to kick off, JM gifted 5 turn left memberships.
Thank you,
very
JM.
much.
Thank you.
Andy Carter gifted 1.
Andy, legend.
Andy.
Specs
So
Beam Farmer gifted
Specs, you're such a
5.
legend, honestly.
JM
love
also
this.
gifted another 5.
Other.
Thank you.
We're grateful for all the support that you show us in
you
so
terms
much.
of subscriptions and gifting of memberships, etc. And the contributions that you guys make go a long way to help us out. So right, we've got quite a few. I don't know which order to start with. I might just go with whatever's on. There was a turn left specific one that I wanted to find. But it is gone. Bear with me. A really good show today, by the way, as always.
Thank
Of course.
you. Well, to be fair, my reading was a little bit terrible today, guys. I apologise. I think I've had too many days off.
So, just in terms of just while people have been giving us some support, I just wanted to bring up Mark's comment. He said it's a shame Turn Left can't do a question time format show like we did with Political Unmuted and Socialist Think Tank. We'd love to do something like that, Mark. Unfortunately, as Sarah's already pointed out, we are still a voluntary organisation. There are 5 of us. We're doing this alongside most of us working full time, and we are, we're putting out. At the moment as much as we can, but we are hoping to expand and do more content of different styles. So we're always keen to hear from you guys what you'd like to see from us. But we can't do any of it without your support. So the more gifted memberships we get, and the more people that help us out and share our content, which helps us get a bit of money in the pot, the more we can offer you. But so watch this space, and hopefully soon. So let's start at the backwards, I think. Let's start at the back and work the opposite
Les,
way.
I just saw your £5 donation. You're an absolute legend.
Oh, has that just come through now? Thanks,
Yeah.
Les.
Thank you, Les.
So Zack
You
Polanski is obviously running for leader. Just on these aren't in any particular order. So Alice has said Carla is so good when she's speaking naturally, not released. I think
I think she meant rehearse, probably maybe like an autocorrect, maybe.
Yes. But I think this is a point that has been brought up quite a number of times. And as you pointed out, Lewis, obviously, we've sat down and we've done an interview with her. We've had conversations with her. I've also interviewed her for Turn Left as well. And when she's speaking freely off the top of her head from the heart, she is fantastic. But it's also worth pointing out that some of these MPs, not just in the Green Party but elsewhere, when they become MPs, they're not necessarily from a background in public speaking, but that's why I think it is really, really important that they learn that skill. Cogs talked about, MPs getting lessons from voice coaches, doing improv classes with actors and comedians. Like, it's really, really important that our elected politicians are able to communicate effectively, but in a way that sounds in a way that sounds genuine and heartfelt. There are some MPs, and unfortunately we see this as well within the Green Party, specifically given we're talking about the Green Party, who, you know, the great members of Parliament, they may be great in the roles that they have in the party, but when it comes to public speaking, they're not the best. And I feel like that's something that Zack has, that some of the other big names
Yeah,
in the party
I
are
think a
lacking.
lot of people obviously fell in love with Carla, right, during like the debates, like in
Yes.
the run up to the election. That's why she got most recognition, because yeah, you're probably aware of what some of the questions are. Yeah, you've probably practiced some of your answers because you'd be an idiot not to. But she was way more natural in lots of different ways, and she was so appealing to lots of people. But
Mhm.
again, there are many occasions where it feels like this is a very highly rehearsed kind of response, and sometimes almost risk averse in a way. Like she's trying to make sure that whatever she's saying is perfect, and it can't be picked apart, or it's sensible as well at the same time. Whereas I feel like Zack definitely has that kind of just naturalness that comes across. It feels like he's just having a conversation and a chat. And again, Carla is great. Carla is fantastic. I'm not saying this to criticize. It's almost because I want her to improve so much more. And she is great when she's off the cuff. But a lot of the time, it just comes across as not robotic, but just rehearsed.
This is the thing, and I think that this is what, like we were saying earlier, the optics. You know, if you want traction, you need to, in some ways, be incredibly relatable. And I don't think people want someone who does sound as rehearsed as some people do. And like, don't get me wrong, like I said, like you guys said, I do love Carla. I think she's great. I think, you know, heart's in the right place. But again, I've been very loud about where I want the Green Party to go. I want them to be aggressive. I want them to be real. I don't want to be known as a tree hugger. And yeah, I do. I actually do have a favorite tree that I hug, ironically enough. But I do, and it makes me feel better if I've had a bad day. But that isn't what the Green Party is about. Like, the Green Party is about so much more than just climate activism. Of course, it's a fundamental part to them, but I want more aggression, and this is what I'm calling for. I've been calling for it for a really long time.
And it's
I
something
just
that
need more oomph.
no, go on.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. I wanted to say oomph. I just need more oomph. That's all.
Yeah, and it definitely appears from Zach's sort of launch of his campaign today. It definitely appears to be something that he's going to offer. According to the BBC, I was listening to Radio 2 earlier, and they had a news bulletin. They've spoken to, they reached out to Adrian Ramsey for comment, who's apparently responded and said that I can't remember if it was the word shocked or surprised about this leadership launch. But I do just want to address that alongside Stanley's comment of I wonder if you pre-warned the current leaders. This isn't a bid to oust anybody. This isn't a coup. Pippa Carrera reported earlier for The Guardian. She reported a leading Green launched his surprise campaign to oust Carla Denyer and Adrian Ramsey as leaders, saying the party needs to be less timid and transform itself into a radical mass membership eco-populism movement. Well, she was quoting Peter Walker when she tweeted that. Except, no disrespect to Pippa Carrera, I actually have quite a lot of respect for her. She herself has broken some very important political stories over the last few days, last few years. Sorry, if I remember rightly, Partygate certainly being one of them. But this is just simply shoddy journalism. This isn't a bid to oust any leader. This isn't a coup. This isn't an attack. The Green Party have leadership elections every 2 years. The reason that there wasn't a leadership election last year was because a general election was called, so they delayed it. And as per Green Party constitution, they are due a leadership election this summer. I think it's due around the August time. And anyone that wants to stand in that election has got until, I think it's the end of June, to put their name forward to say that they want to stand. All Zack's doing is saying, he's standing. He's not attacking Carla and Adrian. In fact, I think he's publicly thanked them and said that he thinks they've done a great job in terms of leading the party to where it is now. They've had their 8th consecutive year.
Can I just quickly highlight as well,
making gains in local elections? Go on.
I just want to highlight, like, that's a great democratic function from a party as well, that they almost have these regular leadership parties, right? So people can't consolidate power. The Tories have the, is it 1922 committee? I always forget what year it is, right? To manage leadership and who gets in and who gets out, yada, yada, yada. The Labour Party don't really have a way to actually oust a leader. I feel like it would force, if the Labour Party had something similar to the Greens, it would force him to have to capitulate to all sections of his party, which obviously he doesn't, because he knows he's got 410 seats or so, whatever it is. Whereas this is a very healthy way to, I think, manage a party where they have to have leadership elections regardless. I really like that.
100%. And I find it interesting that Adrian Ramsey is apparently shocked by this, because it's not. Look, let's be honest. There have been a lot of rumours in the Green Party for a long time now that Zack was planning to stand in this leadership election. Obviously, nothing was confirmed, but there were, word was out in all the different chats and in all the different sort of, I don't want to use the word factions, but it's probably the word that best describes what I'm talking about. Within the party, that Zack may or may not stand, but just as much as there have been other rumours about whether Adrian and Carla are going to stand as well. And I think it's important that when people are reporting on this story, that they don't try and imply that Zack's somehow trying to form a coup or overthrow the leadership. It's purely part of a normal democratic process within the party. Andy said, just talking about the Greens need to do massive amounts of local work in all communities, almost like alternative institutions, to succeed. The Greens do a massive amount of work in all communities, and that is why they do succeed. Cards on the table here for those of you that don't already know. I think I'm the only one of Turn Left who's directly a paid member of a political party.
I am not a member of any political party.
There you go. And I am the token Green Party member. But I can tell you that is what the Green Party do, and the Liberal Democrats do it as well. And actually, the local elections have shown, both in the case of the Lib Dems and the Greens, that doing the local work that they do, it works, and it gets them elected, and it continues to get them elected. The problem that the Green Party have got, a massive problem the Green Party have got, which hopefully a change in leadership, whoever that may be, come the August, will hopefully try and fix, is the Greens don't have the same manpower and the same funding power behind them as a lot of the other parties do. So they hyper focus their areas. They have local targets, and they focus all the time and energy into those local areas.
And my only advice, if I can give any to Zack, because he might be watching, he has reposted the live stream. I would say to Zack that you don't do this already, so keep doing it. Don't avoid any of the tough conversations when people try and come out and talk about trans issues. When people, you're a vegan, they might attack you because of that. Oh, well, look at this lefty vegan. Just take the conversation on. A lot of politicians right now are so risk averse that they'll try and come up with some careful answer to respond to something, and people need to take on the conversations, right? So when we're talking about immigration, people need to have real and honest conversations about them. The Labour Party are choosing to celebrate how many people they're deporting, rather than having really honest conversations with people, and presenting some real life stories of some immigrants that have come to this country, whether it's through boats or through other means. Just take on the conversations, humanize them, and don't avoid them in any way. Take them head on.
I agree, because you will absolutely be called out if you do sit on the fence, and I think we've done that. Yeah, I think we've willingly done that, where we've actually called people out and be like, hey, like why are you being a fence sitter? So yeah, I actually completely agree with that take, Lewis. I think if you want to be taken seriously, like show a side, stand on a side. I agree.
Lorenzo's asked, is Jack going to join the show? He won't be joining us tonight. I am very confident that we will have an interview with him at some point about his leadership campaign. We've had him on the show before. We will definitely have him on the show again. So watch this space on that one. Let me have a look. Vicky, in response to your comment, Lewis, tut, this is wearing a tie is a sign of ambition. What's your response to that one?
Yeah, explain that one, Lewis.
Well, no, I don't think it's unfair that Zack is obviously seeing an opportunity here, and that's what sometimes you have to wait for. Carla and Adrian have carried the party this far, and so has, oh my God, I'm literally forgetting her name, the green icon legend herself, the previous leader.
Caroline Lucas.
Caroline Lucas, thank you very much. They've carried the party this far, and now they have a perfect opportunity as Labour are basically imploding and destroying themselves for somebody to take up this moment. If Reform are growing and Labour are failing, and the Conservatives are doing whatever the Conservatives are doing, and many people who are conservative like the Green Party, they like them for the green side of things. You've got the people who like love the countryside, love the environment, and obviously I know they're not just about that. But if Zack is seeing this as an opportunity, take it. Like, it's not just about not waiting for an opportunity. If this is the perfect moment, if the leadership elections are coming up and all the cards are aligning for Zack, I don't think there's anything wrong with having the ambition. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking up the opportunity. I don't see in the Green Party any sort of like, greedy, power hungry people who, are driven by ego or anything like that. Whereas obviously some people who do take opportunities are in other parties. I don't see that in the Green Party. And again, not a member. By the way, I've never actually voted for the Green Party. I just want to say, never actually voted for the Green Party.
You're the most neutral one here.
I just want to say that, like, I'm not trying to endorse them in any way, but I don't see a problem with being ambitious and obviously taking an opportunity if it presents itself, as long as it's done in the right way, which I think they're handling it in the right way.
I want to put sort of two comments kind of together. So I've just where's it gone? I've just starred a comment from Vivian Woolf, who said, "Frankly, I'm scared a change in leadership would mean throwing trans people under the bus. Seems to be the way things are going, and it's not long since the Greens had a civil war over trans rights." Certainly, as far as Zack's leadership bid goes, Zack has been very vocal advocate for trans rights, both publicly and privately. He's, if he was successful in his campaign, that certainly wouldn't be a problem. Obviously, I can't say who else is going to be running for leader and what their views may be, but I would gently say that I don't think the current leadership are as united as they maybe seem over this issue anyway. So perhaps a change in leadership would further strengthen rights. But I want to just bring in another comment, because obviously alongside the trans rights debate that is still very hot and prevalent in terms of the more culture war side of politics at the moment. Ephra has sent a £10 super chat. Thank you very much for your donation.
Thank you, Ephra.
And has said, "I was talking to a neighbour today who said she liked Farage, though not Reform voter. Turned out that on I'm Not a Celeb, he'd come over well. Same with Bojo on Have I Got News for You, weeps." How do you two think the Green Party need to move forward in terms of tackling things like this, alongside the culture war arguments over, trans issue and immigration? Also, this sense of figures like Farage and Boris Johnson, who definitely fit this populist mould and are attractive to people who maybe don't understand the politics but see them on the telly.
You go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, and this is what I was saying earlier, that they know how to use the TV, they know how to use social media, and that's what concerns me about the right. Because they're so good at it, it means that people who easily access this stuff will say, well, that's someone who represents me, that's someone who's a representative of the working class, when that's not the fact of the matter at all. If anything, people who represent the working classes are people who aren't part of the establishment, are people who are not part of the billionaire class, the millionaire class, like the likes of the Green Party. So this is what I'm saying, that their approach needs to be more aggressive, more unapologetic. And they need to really capitalize on the powers of social media. Everyone's carrying these extensions of themselves everywhere they go. If you literally make things every single day that people are accessing that they deem to be somewhat relatable, because with all due respect, like, people go off of vibes, people go off of what's trendy. And if they see Farage saying, I'm going to go into this tattoo shop and get a tattoo, people are going to be like, what a relatable guy. Like, this is someone who is, a man of the people. So I just think, be more aggressive in the approach. I'm going to keep repeating myself in that, but be more aggressive, capitalize on the things that are around you. But it's a shame, because shows like that, it's just PR, isn't it, at the end of the day? So I don't know, but I'm saying that the Greens need to do that. I don't want to see Zack Polanski on I'm a Celeb, like, to be honest. But yeah, I just more
I think stuff like Have I Got News for You is a good shout, because it's like it's purposeful, right? Like, it's mostly politics and obviously just other news. I don't obviously agree with like platforms like ITV putting people like Matt Hancock and Nigel Farage on things like I'm a Celeb, because it just enables and normalizes this behavior. It's how Trump was able to come into power because of his celebrity status. The same with Nixon back in the day as well, because was it Nixon? Yeah, Nixon. He was a celebrity, right? Yeah. Am I
That
getting
was
people
the
mixed up?
actor. Was it
Was,
J-
was
JFK?
No, it
No,
was
it's
Nixon
Nixon.
who was
It was
yeah, it was
Nixon.
Nixon.
It was
Yeah, it was Nixon
Nixon.
who was the actor. Like I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a celebrity coming into power if they can show that they're competent, right? Like Zelensky was a comedian and whatever else he was before that. But obviously, he's proven to be competent. But this like idea of normalizing somebody so much on the hard right by I'm a celebrity has normalized this person in society in so many different ways. He was obviously already a
No,
big name before.
Reagan. No,
Exactly.
Reagan.
Was it Reagan? Or
He
was
was
it?
saying Reagan.
Oh, was it Reagan? Oh my god!
Pretty
Reagan was
sure
the
Reagan.
actor. Yeah.
Yeah, Reagan.
Why am I getting mixed up? Sorry,
I
guys.
only know that because Martin McFly mentions it to Doc Brown once he's gone back to 1955, and Doc Brown goes, "The actor." That's the only reason I know he's the actor.
Sorry, guys. Thank you
Yeah,
for the
it
fact.
works.
Thank you for the fact. You could see I was confused before. So Anyway, yeah. I would advise like anyone, whether it's Zack or Keir Starmer, to Ed Davey. Like these people need to be getting onto more formats which are not necessarily related to politics. Not like I'm a celeb, but go on podcasts, go on other
Strictly Come
shows.
Dancing.
No, we don't want another
Ed Balls.
Ed Ball
Yeah,
situation.
of course.
But just get into people's spaces. I remember like one massive mistake that Kamala Harris made during the election was that when she went on one of the biggest podcasts in the world, Call Me Daddy, it wasn't an episode of Call Me Daddy. It was just Kamala Harris, and they were just like talking. When what she should have done is gone on and done the show with her, because she takes like questions and talks to her viewers and stuff like that. It should have just been, this is the real Kamala. Do you know what I mean? Like, be a part of the show. Don't make the show you. And I feel like that's a way to win people over. And one of the things that the Trump campaign did in America as well, I'm not saying that this is going to something that Zack should be doing. Maybe he wants to, but they went on streaming sites where gamers were. They joined gamers to campaign on not just Twitch, but other websites too. So you need to look at all media formats, see what's appropriate, and see if you can find some space on there just to communicate with people. Not necessarily the campaign, but just to get yourself out there and just show people that you're a person and you're a human and that you care.
This is it. It's just being more human, and I think sometimes in politics, it's hard for humans to be deemed as human beings when they make the decisions that they do. So I would agree.
Oh wait, what did I call the show? I think I said "Call Me Daddy."
Yeah.
I think I said call her daddy.
You did say
You're
"Call
trying
Me
to tell us
Daddy."
something.
Sorry, that's muscle memory. Sorry, guys.
Moving swiftly on then, our wonderful colleague Cog has been on such a good point. Farage gets a lot of his success from the belief that he's willing to be unapologetically partisan. Zack needs to not be afraid to ruffle some feathers. What do you guys think? Make of Cog's
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I've said this. I feel like I'm a broken record here, but yeah, unapologetic in his approach. And this is the thing, I think the reason why Reform are doing well, sorry, I'm still stuck on Lewis.
No, we
the
move on from that now. Come on.
The reason why Reform are doing so well is literally because of the fact that they are unapologetically partisan. It's true. So I just think we need the same sort of energy on the left. We need the same sort of energy from the Greens. It is to not be afraid to stand 10 toes down in your views, stand 10 toes down in the things that are right, and be unapologetic in that approach. So yeah, agreed.
Yeah, as well. I think in every conversation you kind of need to bring the humanity to it as well. When it comes to, you've got Keir Starmer's famous response to like, do women have a penis? Like these types of questions that you are going to get, you need to have a really good response for them, not rehearsed in the way I was talking about earlier, but just in a more natural way and humanize it. Keir Starmer's famous response of, some people are born with a penis, whatever it was, he said it was a terrible response, right? You need to bring it down to a human level. And call it out as well. Like, don't be afraid to don't try and answer the question of the journalist. When you've got Nick Ferrari in LBC saying, "Do women have a penis?" Just tell him, what a fucking weird question. Like, why are you so obsessed with people's genitals? That's not what I'm obsessed with. What I know is that I've got plenty of friends who are trans, or friends who've hung around with trans people, and they don't feel intimidated by them in any way. If any of these people who are scared of trans people going into their bathrooms, I get it, right? Like, the world is a scary place for a lot of women in this country. However, spend 10 minutes with a trans person and you will realize that everything that you think about them, and this idea that they may be a danger to you or in any way, it will be gone. Just go and spend some time with them. I'm not saying that's the perfect response, but I'd rather give the response that I've just given, that right there, than the umming and erring and trying to get around the question, and just take the question on.
I agree.
Just be unapologetically yourself.
I agree. And it's moments like that. It's when you receive questions like that they will then be clipped. So it's like, if you then have a really, really impactful answer, you then have I don't know, the propensity to be able to go to almost go viral. Like it's always the things within those questions, always those answers that go viral. And I think that's what will gain traction. You'll gain traction after that. So yeah, agree.
We should probably move on a little bit. We've got a £2 super chat from Andy Carter, who's just said that Vivian Wolf has offered to guest/host for you. Thanks, Vivian and Andy. We always appreciate all the support. We're always looking for guests as well, so feel free to reach out to us via email if you would like to. We have had this one from Zeke the Beast as well. I just noticed Lewis is wearing a turn left shirt.
Yeah, and Zeke, can I just say that I don't have one?
Do you not? Have you still not got one?
I don't have one yet.
Oh,
So
we need to get onto that. We'll get that
have a
sorted for
chat
you.
with Curtis, please.
Yeah, he's got some still left, hasn't he?
It's not something that Curtis has said this before. It's not something that we're like selling or marketing or anything anyway. Like maybe at some point in the future, once we maybe get bigger, and we'd always want to make sure that it's like sourced, made, and everything in a really ethical way. Because there are a lot of streamers out there who do some very dodgy merch type of situation.
We are looking into what options are available because people have said in the past they might want it, but we wouldn't offer anything like that out as merchandise to to our audience unless we were able to say that it was ethically sourced and made. So watch this space on that one, but please bear with us. Martin has asked, is this an echo chamber or can I respectfully challenge points? You can absolutely respectfully challenge points. And Martin, your comment is up next, which was why take this is still on the last topic and then we'll move on. Why take the Green Party down the same route as the Socialist Workers' Party, Socialist Party, Communist Party, GB Revolutionary Communist Party, and I could list more. You will just end up losing the losing to the monster raving loony party. I don't think the Green Party is being taken down the same routes as those. I think there's some significant differences between them, but also if your sort of argument is that those parties are all have similar beliefs, then I don't think there's anything wrong with another party that has similar beliefs. I would just point out gently that the difference is that while there may be some policies that are the same across all of those parties and the Greens have got a history of electoral success and keep winning year on year. The other parties don't. So maybe those other parties could look at I think Greens instead.
Like if I'm gonna interpret basically what Zack said in his video, I don't think he's necessarily like wanting to like fully change the party in any way. I think it's just about fully getting the Green Party message out there and attracting a significantly larger amount of people out there. And again, the Green Party have made lots of gains over the years, massive gains in comparison to where they were before to where they were after, right? Because we don't want to compare them to like the Conservatives or Labour because that would be unfair. Zack knows the potential for the Green Party, and I can see it in him. And I've had the same criticisms of Greens for a while, is that if they can just get the right person at the head of the party, and I'm sorry, I don't believe in the co-leader thing. Sorry. I want one leader. It's confusing. If they can get one leader at the top of the party who is a fantastic communicator, that's all you need. That is what you need.
And just to clarify for people watching, I know I've mentioned this already to you, Lewis. The way that the co-leadership thing works is that it was introduced. It was before I joined the party. It was introduced essentially to ensure there was at least some level of gender balance at the top of the party, whereby there has to be 3 people within a leadership position. So you can either run on a joint ticket to be the leaders, and that's when you end up with the co-leaders, in which case you then have one deputy, which is what we've got at the moment. We've got Adrian and Carla, and then we've got Zack as the deputy. Or you can run on a single ticket, which it's my understanding that that's exactly what Zack is doing. He's running as a standalone candidate, as a single leader. If Zack is elected, he would be the leader of the Green Party on his own. But when that happens, there would then need to be 2 co-leaders elected to keep the balance within, and one of those would have to be someone that was of different gender to the other 2. Or but that could be I think that could be 2 female co-leaders, or we could co-deputy leaders, sorry, or you could have a non-binary person as well. But yeah, the idea would be that it's one or the other. So if they cut the co-leader thing at the top, let's say if Zack got elected, my understanding of how it works at the moment is we'd then have 2 deputy leaders. Again, I don't necessarily think that even that is good, but I think it's better to have one person at the top and two beneath them than to have it the other way around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sarah. No, I wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really understand. To be honest, I think we need just one face. That's my take on it. I think I'm quite a simpleton in a lot of ways, and I think one person can carry it on its own. But you made a great explanation, Callum. But just in relation to what Martin was saying about the same route as the Communist Party and the Revolutionary Communist Party, whatever. I find that it's quite an interesting take because I think anything that's like remotely left leaning then gets the communist label thrown onto it. Or if you start talking about socialist talking, taking on socialist talking points, you're then brandished as a communist as well, despite it being socialist talking points. So I don't know. I kind of want to venture away from that talking point slightly because I think that it does provide quite a bad. I mean, like I don't know, quite a bad take on the left side of the political spectrum by brandishing it all as commies and communists.
I also don't think because somebody else, I don't know if it's the same person, somebody else said that one of the problems that the Green Party have is describing themselves as socialist. But I would say I don't think that the Green Party are necessarily a socialist party. They're left wing. They offer socially progressive policies. They certainly have a number of policies that would be considered socialist, but I don't think that they are. I think to describe the Green Party as a socialist party wouldn't be wholly accurate. I don't know whether you would agree with me.
I would agree. I would agree with that because I would. I'm a radical socialist. I feel like I would want more, but I don't think that they are truly socialist.
But they are the closest thing that we've got.
They are the closest thing we've got. I know the closest thing we've got to it.
So moving to, there was a lot of talk at when we first started the show. There was a lot of talk in the comments about the Zack story, which is why there's been more comments about that than some of the others. But we'll move back on to some of the other topics. So Specs has said, I don't think it's a vote for reform. I again think it's a vote against the government. Don't underestimate the public's willingness to give the ruling party a bloody nose, which doesn't help the Greens. And this was in relation to the, are Labour responsible for their own downfall conversation that you were having earlier. I just want to say that I think that what I completely agree with what Specs is saying, actually. And it's interesting because we saw this with Brexit. David Cameron came out and endorsed Remain. We all got, if you're old enough to remember, we all got letters through our door from Her Majesty's government, as it was at the time, essentially telling us that the government were backing Remain and that we should all support Remain. And a lot of people saw that and thought, well, if that's what the government want, if that's what the ruling party want, we're going to give them a bloody nose and we're going to go against them. And they did, just with a very, very small margin. So yeah, I think that's a fair.
I think the issue that we risk running into, though, is they're not going to really change tact, right? So you can give them a bloody nose, which they've technically got right now, right? They just obviously got quite hurt at the recent elections. The polling's not in their favour, and they've just turned around and said, "Oh, we need more blue Labour." They're not going to learn, which is why I want parties like the Green Party to succeed, not necessarily because I endorse or support everything that party stands for, but it's about the idea of uplifting other left-wing parties, because right now I feel like the way Labour are treating all the data out there that shows that people are going to the Green Party, that people are going to Lib Dems and other parties, and people in Scotland are going back to the SNP, is that they don't feel like they're really competing with the left for some reason. And I want almost like I sound like a capitalist here, almost like between parties.
Some healthy competition.
I want some healthy competition between the left-leaning parties, because I don't, for some reason, Labour don't see Greens as a threat, and they should. And I want the Greens to be uplifted even further in hopes that Labour do get pushed back to the left, not because I want to support the Labour Party, but because that by them going to the right, they're moving the Overton window further. And I don't want that to happen. I want Labour to come back to the left. just not normalize what's being normalized right now.
Yeah, agreed. You're absolutely right in saying that the Overton window is shifting more towards the right, and that's the scary part, because now you're going to see Labour, and obviously judging by what we were talking about it earlier, but Wes Streeting saying that he deems the biggest threat to Labour as the Reform Party. He thinks the right is the threat to the Labour Party, and it shouldn't be that at all, because actually the left should be the biggest threat, but it doesn't seem that they see it that way.
It's interesting because electorally,
The left are a threat.
what Wes is saying is correct. Reform are the biggest threat to Labour. In terms of elections, Labour lost a load of councillors, Reform gained a load of councillors. So you could look at that. I'm not saying I agree, by the way, but and I'm going to go into it. But from the outside looking at it, when you look at the numbers of what happened in the local elections, Labour had the worst local election defeat for any. It was the worst defeat for any newly elected prime minister in history when it comes to the first the first set of local elections following a general election. It was the worst defeat ever. I think it was 65% of the seats that they were defending, Labour lost, and obviously Reform made all these gains. So arguably, from a numbers game perspective, Reform are the threat because they're the ones that are taking the seats. However, just to bring in Mia's comment, in the 2017 general election is the forgotten election. The mainstream media acts as if it never happened, but we need to remind the public just how close Jeremy Corbyn got to winning power.
Exactly.
I think what so many people, both within the Labour Party and their membership and supporters, are completely failing to do is they're looking at the overall numbers and they're coming to an assumption, but they're not actually crunching the data. They're not looking at actually where those votes came from. I think you mentioned it earlier, Lewis, that a lot of the Labour votes are actually going to the Liberal Democrats and the Greens. They're not going to Reform. The Conservative vote is where it is the vote that went to Reform. The biggest threat to the Conservatives right now is absolutely Reform UK, because that's where all the Conservative voters are going. But I mean, what happened in Runcorn and Helsby? The Labour vote just didn't show up. They lost 10,000 votes compared to what they got in July. Reform gained 4,000, and the Conservatives lost 4,000. So the Conservative votes went to Reform, who won the by-election by 6 votes. And the Labour vote just disappeared. It didn't even necessarily go to the other 13 candidates that were standing. It just evaporated. Because a lot of those people are so disillusioned with the Labour Party that they're simply not going out and voting for them anymore. And I think it is worth remembering, there are people still that love to bring Jeremy Corbyn up into this argument and talk about, how well he led the party to the worst defeat. So appealing to those people that supported him isn't going to help. But Labour haven't just lost the left, who they told weren't welcome. They're losing the centre as well now.
They are. And this is what I was saying earlier, because I'd mentioned that a lot of the votes that Labour are losing to are to the Lib Dems and Greens, but also a lot of people are just politically homeless. Like, they just don't resonate with any of these parties. They're like, I'm sick and tired of what's coming. This, not me, I'm not saying this. They're sick and tired of what's coming up on their screens. They're sick and tired of Labour, sick and tired of the Tories. And they're just feeling a bit disillusioned at the moment, which is why I'm stressing the importance of really capitalising on this moment. You've got disillusioned voters that have no idea where to go. What better time than to be assertive? What better time than to be aggressive? Because you could really just grab these votes. And if Labour was smart with it, they'd realise that actually it's not just about trying to grab those Reform voters or those Conservative voters, ex-Conservative voters who were just, on the fence. It's actually about getting those people on the left if you wanted to. Obviously, I'm not endorsing that, but yeah.
Now, I just wanted to. Oh, sorry, Lewis. There was something you wanted to add on that.
No, I was just going to say, I've said this before, and I don't know, people might hate me for this. The worst part of the Green Party is its name, and I don't mean that in a bad way, in terms of like it's a bad name. It's just the association that comes with the name Green, because it only puts them in one category of like who they are to many people who don't know them. And I feel like this is part of the reason why the parties like Liberal Democrats can succeed, because if you look at both platforms, I think Liberal Democrats have some good policies, Greens have some great policies too. I just feel like when people hear the word Green, it's only associated with one thing, and there's almost like, how can you be a Green Party without being called Green? Because I feel like in so many ways
do you think a rebrand
around the world,
do you think a rebrand would help the Greens at this point? point, though, or do you think it confused things even more?
But again, that's the problem. It's part of their
things.
identity, isn't it? They want to be unapologetically green.
Yeah.
But how is there a way that a party, not the Green Party necessarily, a party in the future who wants to be a Green Party, not have that name, but still demonstrate that
I
as their identity at the same time? Do you know what
I
I mean?
think if the Greens can successfully take control of the narrative when it comes to how they communicate with the public, I think the name of the party won't be a problem anymore. I think the biggest issue is partly because of the name, but partly because of the lack of ability for a lot of the Greens to be able to get the message out. I mean, I met people on the doorstep who literally said, "Oh no, I won't vote Green. They just care about the environment." And it's like, have you read the manifesto? Do you know anything about any of the other social issues that they care about? Any of the other, tackling poverty, being like a major one? Do you know anything about, the Green Party's views to do that? And they said, no, I thought they were just about the environment of the Green
This is what I
Party.
said. This is
But
what I've been
if but if
saying.
the but if the Greens can be successful in getting their messaging out there, then the name may become a secondary issue. But if you haven't got the messaging and all you've got is the name, it does become really, really difficult. I just wanted to bring up something. There was a bit of breaking news that came out about 20 minutes or so before we came live. Speaking of Pippa Crerar again earlier on, she's reported that the government is now considering increasing the winter fuel allowance income threshold in response to the local election results. And she's
Bit
just said
lame.
she said Downing Street is reviewing its controversial winter fuel payments cut amid growing anxiety at top of government that policy could wreak serious electoral damage. Keir Starmer's senior team has been discussing for several weeks, allegedly, how to handle public anger over policy, which bubbled over at local elections. While full reversal is not expected, Number 10 sources say they're considering whether to increase the 11,500 threshold over which pensioners are no longer eligible for allowance. It's really interesting, isn't it, that Wes Streeting sits on the television and says that, he talks about reform and the threat that they are, and he thinks that they're a real problem. But they've been having conversations in cabinet behind the scenes for weeks now, it seems, where they've acknowledged that their policies are causing harm to their party. They've acknowledged that their policies are leading to less people wanting to vote for them. Yet publicly, they're still quite happy to blame everybody else.
This is why they're so naive. Like, I don't want to hash out the whole thing again, but it's almost like what I was talking about earlier with the trans issue, is that if they would have just immediately come out and almost like taken the blowback from the right-wing media and just legislated straight away, they could have avoided all this mess. By them saying, even they could have said anything and they would have won, right? If they would have just said, things are tough. Tories have fucked it. We might have to put up tax by a percentage point, because if they would have just put up taxes by literally a single percentage point, which is tough on a lot of people, it's tough, right? It would have avoided all of these issues. If you can communicate to the public, and we already know how much the Tories have messed this up, they wouldn't have had to go through all this with the winter fuel payments. They wouldn't have had to go through all this with cutting the benefits and scrimping and scraping here and there. If they could have just said, let's do 1 or 2 years of a percentage increase. It's shit, but like, this is what we need to do. And I feel like that's again just being straight up. It's being honest. It's being forward. And they could have avoided all the negative press, votes, everything that they have received so far on this issue.
Yeah.
That's stupid.
Natalie said Labour are already in breach of both equality laws on trans rights and face the European Human Rights Courts now. Also, they can't give a definition of biological sex because they know that they'll be in the wrong. It's very interesting, isn't it, that, and I saw that video last night that you're referring to about the individual in America. Was it in Congress or somewhere where, that whisper into the ear when they were talking about intersex?
That's not true.
That's not true.
Yeah.
It's a funny one, isn't it? Because they're welcoming the Supreme Court clarification, quote unquote, which offers no clarification whatsoever. Yet they can't now give a definition of biological sex, because if they do, it would contradict essentially what the Supreme Court ruling is.
Yeah. Absolutely. But again, a bunch of fence sitters that don't want to humanize the most vulnerable people within society. So what do they want to do? They want to cave into the reactionary stuff. And today, and we said this before, I spoke about it on the women's debrief, but today it would be trans people. Tomorrow it would be another group that case in that they deem as reactionary. So my worry is that this is then going to continue this trend of let's just target the most minoritized, let's just target the most vulnerable, because we think it's going to get us a few more votes. But all it does is actually just dehumanizes people, and it's just dehumanizing the trans community. So yeah.
And I just want to add this as well. This, okay, maybe I'm overblowing it here. People can tell me in the comments. This lack of action from Labour could actually be the thing that helps reform win in a few years. Because if the European courts have to tell our government that they can't do this and that they have to legislate like they did back in 2001-2 when they ended up bringing in the Gender Recognition Act, that was in response to a European court ruling. If the European Court comes in and says what's happening in the UK can't happen, Nigel Farage, that's going to be his winning card. This foreign court is telling us that we have to do this, that we have to change our laws, that women have to be unsafe, because that's the rhetoric obviously he will go with. Labour's lack of action could literally lead to reform getting into power because of the European courts having to hold our government accountable.
I actually agree with you.
So do I, and I'll be honest, that it's frightening because that thought hadn't crossed my mind actually.
Yeah,
and now you say it, it's like shit. Yes, good point.
it's true. Completely
Good
agree with
point.
you.
I am aware of time. I know we've not covered much of the other stories in much detail, but there was a lot of talk in the chat tonight about Zack Polanski and the Green Party situation. I'll just bring this one up. Becca says, "Can I say not objectifyingly, but Sarah looks very lovely today in yellow summer sunny."
Thank you. I was like, yeah, yellow for Bank Holiday Monday and a 4-day week ahead.
And we've had a question from William Jackdaw, which I gather from the chat is in relation to something that's happened elsewhere. But can I please confirm that in 6 months' time, Turn Left aren't going to try and make the case for going to church?
I don't think that will happen anytime soon. I don't know. Actually, in some sort of dystopian reality, maybe.
Yeah, I think we've got a good mix of differing religions, no religions, and agnosticism within our ranks here. So I don't think
I'm an atheist.
Yeah, so I don't think we'll be doing that anytime.
But no judgments to anyone who
anytime
does
soon.
resonate with going to the church. If that's what makes you happy, then go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
But we won't.
I'm just curious what spurred on that.
I think it was something to do with another streaming site.
So that made me laugh.
Andrew Wilton said, "Why is the taxpayer subsidising their food at all?" Just in relation to the conversation that we were having again earlier. I know it wasn't the main conversation, but it's a good point. It doesn't happen anywhere else, does it? You know.
Well, I think the idea is that in theory, if you have tax subsidized food for politicians, prime ministers, like all the staff and all that type of stuff, it in theory should save us money, because then they don't have to obviously claim food, because on paper, if you don't look at them as an MP, look at them as a worker who is traveling. If you belong to any other job and you travel across the country, you're allowed to claim expenses. So what's cheaper for the taxpayer? A person going to a private company restaurant and paying for a meal, or going to a tax subsidized kitchen type of area within one of the buildings? It's the kitchen thing. They shouldn't have both.
But equally, they shouldn't have. But they shouldn't have either. They shouldn't be able to go and spend a load of money in a swanky restaurant and then claim that back.
How do they eat then as traveling workers?
But they're not travelling workers. If they're in Parliament where the food is subsidised, they're not travelling workers. They've already got subsidy.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like
they've already got subsidy on the second homes that they're allowed to have when they're in London, so they can take a packed lunch like everybody else if it's really a problem.
Go get a bloody meal deal with a club card. Honestly, like the rest of us.
But this is what I mean,
it's ridiculous. Like, why?
I have never worked in a place where my food where my meals have been subsidized by the employer, or where I've been allowed to have expenses if my place of work is the same place on a regular basis. If I'm traveling from place to place and I have to stay over somewhere, or if I've got to go to London for a briefing for 3 days or whatever, absolutely they cover those things. But they are when they are in Westminster, which is where they get the subsidized food, they have already got homes in London that are also subsidised by the taxpayer.
Exactly.
So it's not like they're travelling to work, so they need to have the meal subsidised. If they then end up in, if they're doing a campaign tour or whatever, and they're going, they're going around the country to campaign, or then fair enough, claim some expenses
But
back. That's fine.
it's
But
not
when they are in
just
London, I don't think
us.
they should get. I don't think they should have a subsidised canteen or be allowed to claim expenses on meals, because they're literally in a city where they have a home. Take a packed lunch like everybody else if it's a problem, or use their wages that have just gone up again to buy their own
Okay,
food,
This
like
this
the
is
rest
the
of
thing.
us.
I feel like we're okay. I'm gonna you're gonna make me defend them. You're gonna make me defend them. I'm a
You
type
don't
of
have to.
person.
It's
I'm
a
a type of
choice.
person who believes that working for companies, like, this should be a benefit for working for a company. I'm not mad of having taxpayer subsidized food for any government workers, as long as everybody gets it and there's no two-tier system. And the two-tier system, I'm using two-tier like Reform do, is that an MP can be at PMQs on Wednesday at a debate and then walk over to the street and go to a lovely fancy restaurant. Obviously, there are limits and stuff like that. If you're on the site and you're in that day, there should be rules, and this could be,
But
again, a very
I
populist thing. There should be rules that they can't go out and go to a fancy restaurant. Use the
agree.
taxpayer subsidies.
I agree.
I mean, I agree with that. If they're gonna keep what they've already got with in terms of the subsidised food, then fair enough. Absolutely, make it so that that's the only thing they can claim. But also, not all government workers get subsidised food. If you
They
work
don't.
in Parliament,
They
you
should.
do.
Yeah.
But if you're working in other parts of the country for government, you don't
But I'm
necessarily
sorry.
get
I'm
that.
sorry. They get paid a shitload of money. They can go afford a bloody meal. And on top of that, if they, because they debate, how much money should go towards the kids that need free school meals, and let's make cuts to this, and let's do this, and let's make poor people poorer, then I'm not on board of subsidizing their food, with all due respect. If there are the most vulnerable people within society, the ones that are suffering, and you guys are still benefiting, then honestly, you can all just do one. Go get a bloody meal deal from Tesco. If you don't want Tesco, I'm sure you can afford some Waitrose food.
And the best of it is, as anyone that's spent even an hour in Parliament Square would probably know, there is literally a Tesco Express directly opposite Parliament
Tesco.
that has meal deals, and there's still about £3.50, £4 for a meal
They
deal.
get paid enough. They get paid
Like,
enough.
it's not. And if they're walking, if they're not using the underground tunnel between Parliament and the Portcullis House to get there, they're literally, if they're walking along the street to get there, they literally have to walk
See,
past the Tesco's to get there.
I'm not. I'm again. You're gonna make me defend them. I'm not going to expect anyone, especially very busy people, to be going over and queuing at Tesco's Press for a meal deal.
Busy doing what?
But again, I am the type of person who, because I've been privileged enough to working in some workplaces. I used to be a partner for the John Lewis Partnership. Right, I worked at Waitrose. They made sure that their staff were fed very well.
The only
we had
time.
subsidized meals. I'm talking about universality when it comes to these types of
Yeah,
things.
okay,
I want to see.
But
I want to see environments where people are well fed
agree.
and well nourished and have access to good and wide food in their workplaces, so they could be more productive and happier
I
workers,
agree.
because that's what they are as well. So it's not about saying they shouldn't have it because other people don't. It should be everybody should have it. That's the
Well,
way.
I agree. Everyone should have it.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I do think I take back what I said earlier. Actually, there was one workplace where I did get fed, but it was because I worked in a fast food restaurant and they
I
just
worked
gave me
at
the fast food.
Mackey's. Yeah, I worked at
Me too.
Mackey's.
So
Every morning at Waitrose, when I used to work there, Waitrose, Meanwood, Leeds, if anybody's from the area, worked there for 7 years. I opened the store, full English every single morning.
but equally, I mean, you talk
Oh,
about
wow.
Great.
going in and
Absolutely
queue,
great.
and having to queue up for a meal deal or whatever. I mean, I worked in retail for about 6 years. And obviously when you work in retail, they don't, unless you're in a retail place that has, like, if you're working in a supermarket or whatever, where they might have a cafe. I worked in Argos, so they didn't make food. So I had a half hour. In fact, at one point, I think I had a 20-minute lunch break. And if I had to go out and queue up and buy my food, and if I didn't have time to do it, I had to bring my food with me. I do agree. I do agree that I do agree there's an argument to be made in terms of making sure that food is available in the workplace for people. But equally, I mean, let's be honest, the government can't even give school children free school meals.
This is
So
what I'm saying.
if
This is what I'm saying.
if they can't even do that, I do think it's unfair that they should
said.
get subsidized
Mhm.
food when they can't even feed
Everybody
kids.
should be very well
You know?
fed. You should look. We could have an entire episode in about how other kids around the world are fed in their schools. But I just want to say as well, just to people making comments about Waitrose, I worked there. I did not shop there. Sometimes I did because it was 25%. I got 25. Oh no,
Oh,
wait, no,
good.
25% was off John Lewis. I only got 12.5% of the food in Waitrose. I didn't even know what an avocado was when I first started working there. Okay, I'm from a council estate in Leeds. I genuinely was like, what is this item that I'm holding right now? People used to come up to me and be like, where's the pomegranate molasses? And I'm like, I have no idea what
What's
that is.
pomegranate
I
molasses?
work there. I am not a Waitrose shopper.
No, this is true.
Oh
I'm
god, I actually went to Waitrose today.
you liar. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm
I
joking.
got a coffee. I got a
No,
coffee. I got a
no, it's
coffee.
so fair. Like, look, I do think, and I will just say, we always get comments about where people think that we're from or what our upbringings were like based on how we talk or based on previous jobs that we've had. But the fact of the matter is that we have a lot of us have grown on turn left have grown up pretty tough, and I
That,
think
that
that needs to be
that's
recognised.
the point. Vicky said, gonna say again, they even make teachers pay the VAT on school meals if they
Yes,
buy
I was
them.
going to say this. I was going to say this. Yeah, I was going to say they do make teachers do that. They do make
I
teachers.
must say that
Really?
when I've actually, all right, I did tell a lie early because there's another job when I did get fed, but it was only sometimes, and it was when I was doing some acting work in schools. Very occasionally, we'd go to a school where the teachers would insist, if we were there all day, they would insist that we had something to eat, and they would give us the food for free. But I then found out at another school that we went to when the teacher offered to do that for us, that the teachers themselves were actually paying for it out of their own pocket so that we could eat it for free. Which I was horrified to find out, and subsequently gave them some money to cover the cost of it. But yeah, it's a really interesting conversation. Maybe it's a topic to just have a full 2-hour debate on another time, or over on TikTok. Maybe.
On
Yeah, I want
TikTok.
people to have the best food environments when it comes to their education,
Oh,
growing up,
yeah,
primary school, high school, workplaces. We should all be well nourished. We live in a
I
convenient
agree.
society where we nourish ourselves sometimes in poor ways because we just don't have the time. But if a workplace can provide really good, convenient, healthy, either subsidized or free food for you, that should be the way to go.
I agree. I agree.
Anyway, I think we should probably call it a wrap on that one.
Agreed.
If you both agree, I'm gonna step back down. But thanks again for all of your
Thank you
comments.
so
We appreciate
much.
all of them, and thanks again just for the incredible, amazing support from you all.
Yes.
Today we've had a brilliant number of viewers in tonight, and thank you for all your
And the donations and the
and
memberships as well. We had quite a few,
memberships as
so thank
well.
you again.
But if Sarah says, don't break your backs if you can't afford it. That's fine, but we appreciate even you liking, sharing, and commenting on our streams. So
Agreed.
I'm gonna go back to the
Thank you.
dark pits of the backstage area, and I will leave you both to it.
Thank you so much, Cal. Yeah, definitely. What a great show. Thank you so much, Lewis. You've been amazing. And it's been a while since we've done a show together. So it's been really, really nice. So I'm grateful.
It has
Very
been a lovely
grateful.
show, but obviously the news is just crazier and crazier every week. So I'm sure we'll have more to talk about in the future as
Yeah,
well.
very true. As Lewis always says, it's been a very, very busy news week. It's been a very busy news cycle.
I'm going to change my name to Daddy though.
Call him daddy. Not going to say that again. That's all we have time for. Thank you to our viewers who tuned in. And of course, thank you to Lewis for joining tonight. It's been incredible. As ever, remember to like the stream. And if you're not a subscriber, then hit that button, tell a friend of a friend as well. If you want us to grow, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There is a link to our Patreon, as you know, where you can support us monthly or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. Again, don't put yourself out. Your presence is just as priceless. And also, just having you here is great. Alternatively, you can become a YouTube member for just 99 pence. Thank you again, though. I'm Sarah Dallal, and I'll see you guys next time.